Welcome to the Morse Code Podcast, where we go deep with the most inspiring artists, musicians, and writers in Nashville and touring through Nashville. My name's Korby, and I'm hoping these conversations inspire you to push deeper into your own work, whether you're a full-time professional or just starting out on your own creative odyssey. If you're coming through town and would like to be on the podcast, drop us a note at hello@morsecodepodcast.com. And before I get to our next guest, I just want to say a few words of thanks to everyone who came out to our show last Saturday at the 5 Spot in Nashville. We got two fantastic performances from my friends Abby Jane and Carl Anderson. I played a full band set with my guys, and we sneak screened a world premiere music video directed by Mila Villaplana and starring Mason McCarty and Emma Namovska. It was for my new single, Meet Me at the End of the World, which comes out March 18. If I might gently, respectfully, candidly ask you to click over to my Insta at Korby and pre-save my song through the link in bio there, that would be so amazing and helpful to me. I might just say something else here. This show had a lot of personal meaning for me. For one, it was my first full band show in a couple of years, and it was the best time I've had in as long as I can remember. And more than anything in late memory, it was during those 45 minutes that I felt like I was doing what I was put on earth to do. If you've ever been lucky enough to have something in your life that immediate, you will spend the rest of your days trying to do it again and again. God, it makes me a little emotional. After making 8 albums and touring basically my whole 30s, I got so hurt by it all that I had to walk away. And I didn't know for how long, maybe forever. It was fine because I just decided to do something else. I focused a ton of effort and energy on film and writing. And there's no doubt in my mind that this podcast, with all its life-changing implications, would never have been possible without me and Randa and our buddy Travis Nicholson making the Morse Code TV show. But Saturday night, it was like a cattle prod to my heart. So incredibly validating and amazing and cathartic and just fucking fun. He'll probably never hear this, but I want to acknowledge my friend Anthony DaCosta, who, in addition to being a world-class musician and artist himself, believed in me and helped me put together this band of absolute monster players. They took my little song and dance and made it shiver in the light, It was kind of fitting and poetic that he did that because he's, after all, the producer of this new song of mine, Meet Me at the End of the World. We recorded it together last spring, and that experience of working with him, how positive it was and how much I love what we made together is why I'm here now, putting this song out, putting my heart back out there for anyone to love or like or laugh at. I'm just back in this game, okay? And I'm fucking grateful to be here. All right, my next guest is a fountain of infectious joy and curiosity and is in firm possession of a kind of easygoing virtuosity that he just downplays. And mostly he just has the rarest of gifts. This man builds community like no one I've ever met. Eric Fortaleza was born in the Philippines before moving to Sydney, Australia, which is where he got involved in music. But it wasn't until 2019 that he made the unlikely jump to Nashville. He's worked with Lindsay L., David Ryan Harris, Chris Young, Randy Travis, and he's the founder and director of Pitch Meeting, a one-of-a-kind event where Nashville songwriters get up and perform their song with the house backing band, who, it must be said, has never heard the song before. I've been multiple times to the Pitch Meeting show, and I've got to say it is the only thing of its kind in Nashville and maybe anywhere, a must-see event. So this conversation has kind of a guru element to it. It's obvious to anyone who talks to Eric for more than 3 sentences that music for him is a spiritual affair. The man trades in vibrations. He's also an acute observer of the phenomenon known as human behavior. So he has, let's say, an elevated perspective on why it's important to play music at the highest, most dangerous level possible. He also runs a project called the Moga Family Band, and near the end of the taping, his bandmate Owen Fader showed up with an alto sax and a voice borrowed from Sam Cooke's Guardian Angel, and they played a song together that is, emblematic of why I do this podcast. You got to listen to the end. Watch it if you can on the YouTube, and you can because it's there. If you get something out of the Morse Code Podcast, please follow us on Spotify or Apple and subscribe on YouTube. We're here every week with a new inspiring artist, because what is the point of life if you aren't inspired? And now here's my conversation with Eric Fortaleza. Eric Fortaleza. Dude, thank you so much for making some time for us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since I met you. I want to say like 2 years ago, probably.
Yeah, that's about right.
When
2 years ago. Yeah.
Pitch Meeting started, was like running strong. I feel like it hit strong and has been running strong since. But I just am so impressed with a number of things. I mean, the musicianship first and foremost, the fearlessness on stage of just like grabbing the reins and being like, this is what we're going to do, go, jump, butt, and just like running the circus. And then also you have this amazing ability to make people just feel instantly comfortable, which you did right when you walked in like 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
So hopefully that's resonating somewhat.
Thanks.
And hopefully we can also like try to keep this focused on you as much as possible. I know that's not your favorite thing in the world, but it is my favorite thing in the world. And I thought that maybe we could track a little bit of your story, which is unusual. And this is, I'm going to tell you what I know, and then you can kind of correct me, and we'll go forth from there. But you moved here in 2019.
2019, July.
From Sydney.
Sydney, Australia.
Okay, first question. Mm-hmm. That is as big a move as one can make.
Oh, yeah.
Like literally on the other side of the planet,
yeah.
You moved. And two questions are, what prompted it? And then what made you feel like that was the right time, or that you weren't crazy for doing this?
I'm crazy for doing anything first.
Okay.
First off.
Noted. Let me write that down.
What prompted it? Something about the U.S. I mean, I grew up in Australia. I was born in the Philippines.
Okay.
But I grew up in Sydney, Australia. That's kind of where I feel home is. That's where I learned. That's where I fell in love. That's where I fell out. That's where I got heartbroken. That's where I learned how to be an adult. Oh, what are taxes? Whatever. I think those are my formative years in Australia. And for at least pursuing music, by this, I mean the US, the United States, America, or American culture, music, jazz, blues, everything. Every time I go back or listen to what is the thing that resonates with me the most, I go back here. And I'm such a big fan of when I first heard John Mayer, I was like, oh, who does John Mayer listen to? Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan. I was like, oh, what did they play? Mm-hmm. And I kind of go backwards, and I always wanted to move here because this is where I felt that originated.
Okay, now I want to go back a little bit farther.
Sure.
You were born in the Philippines.
Yes.
And did you have a dream at a young age to be part of music?
When I was in the Philippines, no.
As a little kid? Or when did that dream kind of start bubbling?
Well, it's tricky because my mom is so important with that, because she would just put on, because of her, as a young kid, other than watching cartoons and playing video games, she would just put on the Beatles. She would put on Simon and Garfunkel. She would put on, so I would hear this folk blues pop thing, but out of nowhere she would just put on like big band jazz stuff, and I'm like, well, what is this? Yeah. Like as a young kid, so I hear this stuff, but there was no pursuit, because as a young kid, I was blessed enough to just not have to think about how to take care of myself. It was more like, what do I like?
Yeah.
Filipino culture is very music based. There's a lot of great singers.
Yes.
It's always about karaoke and singing.
That's right.
So it kind of, that gets formed in you because everyone's singing and everyone's outdoing each other in karaoke, whatever it is. But I never really thought about it until I got to grow up in Australia.
So what made you move to Australia then?
I think my parents, a third world country, if there's an opportunity to get out,
Yeah.
You get out.
And I think that's why I was asking. So you moved with your folks to Australia.
That's right.
How old were you?
I was 9 or 10, around that age.
And that's when you first were exposed to like, oh, maybe
I was an immigrant. I was a young immigrant boy, like that did not want to be different, because I was like, I don't want to be different, but I am different. I look different. But I didn't. Like, you don't want to be different when you're that age.
Yeah,
I
didn't either.
You know, so
his curly hair was a major problem when I was in high school.
Obviously, like growing up in Australia, I tried to. A lot of people ask, it's like, why don't you have the Australian accent? I think my natural immigrant biology, whatever that is, makes me like, I take on accents, and I just like, because no one understands when I first moved here or when I first visited the U.S. when I wanted a banana smoothie. They're like, excuse me. And I'm like, oh, banana. And if I'm like, can I just have some water? Can I have some water, please? And they're like, what? Water. And I think it's just natural within me to just go.
It's like a chameleon gene.
Yeah, you kind of have to, because not have to, sorry. I think from a 9 and 10, that's what I had to do, because I was like, if I stuck with my Filipino accent at a 9 and 10 year old, it's just the way it works. Bullying is really great at getting rid of accents.
Yeah.
But
sure.
But that's my assessing that, of trying to figure where that came from.
Okay, so now you're in Australia, and you kind of when did you start showing some like musical aptitude? And then did people encourage you? Did you seek it out? Like, I'm trying to find this thread, because you're obviously a really ambitious guy, and like, where did that start?
Well,
and would you think that you're an ambitious person? Would you agree?
I love listening to music. Who doesn't? Which is
a lot of people don't actually.
Which is weird. You're right.
Yeah.
My sister doesn't really listen. It's not her. She doesn't think about, I want to listen to music today. I don't. There needs to be music. And she doesn't really. So yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't really listen to music. So I agree. Sorry. But I started playing sports, and that's kind of how you assimilate more. I played rugby, football, the Australian version. And
still don't understand it.
It's like NFL, but without the pads. That's really all it is. That's the best way to summarize it.
But then they kick it through the goalpost, then they run, and then they kick it through. Yeah, totally.
But
for another pod.
But it started when I got injured when I was 16. I injured my patella, which
also
is
known as the kneecap bone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
The kneecap. Trying to break it down for the simpletons
and
like me.
I was just like, okay, so I had a year off, and I can't play football anymore. And there's a bunch of buddies playing guitar, and I was like, okay, how do you play that chord? And we were all just teaching each other. Little did I know, when I started picking up the guitar, my mom said, oh, I play a bit of guitar. And I was like, what? This entire time you never told me? I love that I listened to that music. I love that mom would put on that music from when I was a kid, because it comes from somewhere. It can't just come from nowhere. Yeah. I love that I heard something happened, because though I do play bass, something happened from the songs that she would play, because it made me love songs more than, whatever, like instrumental musicality. Like
virtuosity.
Sometimes they're the same, and sometimes it's one. But I love songs because of my mom, because I heard Paul Simon. I loved songs because of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. The songs mattered more than the playing. So I think that just got ingrained in me. But I just started playing when I was 16. I started playing acoustic guitar with my friends, and then there was 5 of us all playing acoustic. And then we're like, hold on, we can't all play acoustic. So just so happened in this group of 5, the first guy that played guitar, that all started teaching all of us, we were all playing. One guy sings better than all of us. If you hear this, he's not a great singer, but he sings better than all of us. Maybe he's better now, but this is when we were like 16, 15. But, and then, my friend's dad had an eBay addiction. So every now and then, he would be like, oh, my dad just bought a barbell set, and my mom's really upset. And out of nowhere, my dad just bought this and that. And one week, while we're all playing acoustic guitar, oh, my dad just bought a drum kit. And then I was like, well, I guess that leaves bass. I'll go play bass. I worked at a steakhouse, and I saved enough money. I worked 8 months, getting paid like $6 an hour or something like that. I worked for 8 months, saved all my money, got a Fender Rumble, and a Chinese copy Music Man, a cheaper bass, and then I quit. And then I was like, all right. I remembered because
you quit. Oh, you quit the store. You quit the restaurant.
I quit the restaurant. Yeah. And I remember that moment. Pro. Yeah, pro. Our first gig was Valentine's Day at high school. And I was like, here we go. Play some Teddy Geiger, John Mayer, whatever it was.
I can relate to so much of this story in just many ways of like being exposed to songs first and having that be like sort of the ground of your musical adventure and appreciation is like around songs and as opposed to virtuosity. And then just the being with friends and teaching each other how to play. That's exactly how I learned how to play music. It's just like the joy of doing it along the way. And there's like a little competition, but it's also like something you can do together. And you can I loved too the incredible empowerment that came with like hearing a song from a band that I liked. Like I was really into The Cure when I was younger.
Oh wow, yeah.
In high school and stuff. And when you the moment that you learned how to play it and then you could play it, it was like it became yours. Those early experiences of that were just lit me on fire.
Yeah.
It was like a way of making you could step into art. You actually could do it. You know what I mean? Like it didn't occur to me before that.
That's the closest you could ever be. So it's interesting that you say that because I think whatever it might be that I figured out in my young life, because I remembered around this time, it was like YouTube was just popping up. And then you're like, you can watch lessons, you can buy DVDs. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of like guitarists would then watch guitar lesson videos. And drummers would watch drum DVDs, etc. And I guess the bass player route is watch a bass player teaching bass stuff. But I did do that in the beginning, but I quickly pivoted because there's something that you said to that, like how when you play, you're part of the art. But then I realized something at 16 or 17, when I started playing bass, I realized, I was like, why am I listening to bass players? I'm never going to play with them. Like the likelihood of me playing with Pino Palladino is lower than playing with John Mayer. I mean, sure.
Ironically, yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, sure. Yes, maybe not, but still, like playing bass, I was like, I should buy drum DVDs because I will play with drummers. I should watch guitar lessons, watching Marty Schwartz on YouTube and just like, oh, that's how you. I was trying to listen to other musicians more during that young YouTube era because I was like, oh, those are the guys I'll play with, not other bass players. Mm-hmm. Why would I, if I just know what bass players want, that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. I think I need to listen to what horn players want, what drummers like, what guitarists like, and then I'll be able to be part of the art. Because then when I would play a cover, when I would play, like you said, you're getting into the art. That's the closest you'll feel to that art form where playing together or you're learning that song. I realized that I'm like, well, I'm not playing what I would do because I'd learn how to like, oh, you can scoop the bass and you can scoop the EQ of the bass.
I'm like in the song, you're in the track now.
I'm in the track. I did that with old covers of John Mayer songs. I would just scoop that bass out and then I'll play a cover on YouTube. And then it's like people sounds like, man, how'd you do that? The mix sounds so good because I'm like, I just scooped out the bass and it sounds like I'm the one playing it.
Yeah.
But then I realized I'm not playing with Pino anymore. I'm playing with Steve Jordan. Mm-hmm. I'm playing with Mayer himself. Like, that's the closest.
What a great insight. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
That's something that you said that too. How do I be part of the art? But then if I'm envisioning myself there, what is it really? And that's what I learned. That helped me learn how to be like, oh, I don't need to please other bass players. I'm never playing with them. Mm-hmm. But
so did you start gigging at an early age in Sydney and around? And what I'm trying to get at is like, where did you rise up in the scene and then decide like, I'm going to make the big leap now? Circling back to my original question.
Well, I I grew up in Western Sydney, about an hour away from Sydney. So that's where most immigrants move to. It's cheaper, obviously, but it's about an hour from Sydney downtown, and then like you have your surrounding suburbs. This is a suburb called Blacktown that has its own history of even that name, but around there was a lot of different musicians and a lot of different churches. There's actually a little area called the Hills District with 5 different suburbs called Seven Hills, Pendle Hill, Castle Hill, whatever. And then they all started a church a long time ago there in this hills area called Hillsong. So there's that happening at around the same time when I was growing up. So there was a lot of that kind of music.
Hillsong, is that like the church music?
Yeah,
praise and worship music.
Super praise and worship music. Yeah. So I was hearing that music a lot. And but around this time when I was still in high school, I would like, all right, guys, we got a gig, but we're also 16, 17. And when we were around 18, that's when I realized, oh, I want this more than them. I was like, because bass is easier than most instruments. And as much as I want to say like, no, man, it's its own. But really, at the end of the day, like I don't want to make people go, no, bass is equal. It's like, nah, not really. Like it's not, it's funny. It's only 4 strings, or if you get a 5-string, whatever.
I mean, you can go Victor Wooten route if you want, but you also can have a great career. And probably, I mean, a really great career if you know how to support the song.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And
you don't need to do more than what I do. I'm not.
Yeah,
that
you got
kind
some
of,
chops.
Yeah, I'm not that. I mean, chops, but I'm really busy and I get in the way a lot. But but my point, like to answer that question, that's when I kind of realized that in Western Sydney there was a scene of musicians playing, and then I remembered one of the first big gigs I was doing around Western Sydney, the community. We were opening up for this big YouTube artist from the US, and the booking agent was like, guys, like a lot of this is good exposure, and we got paid nothing or close to nothing, yet they were charging $150 for $300 for meet and greets for the big artists. And we're like, but we're the opening act. And we started the show and we're not getting paid anything. And then I started realizing that scene didn't go anywhere because they kept getting, like, who made a lot of money were the booking agents. But the young musicians didn't. But they were doing it part-time. They were taking advantage of young part-time musicians that did not know what it took to do music full-time. And when I do this separate thing, there's Western Sydney, an hour away, where there's a lot of people that have other full-time jobs outside of music, but they play music, so they tap into that. And then in Sydney, downtown, that's where people are playing music full-time. I realized if I keep investing here, I'm not going to get anywhere. I need to go downtown. That's where I need to play. But I also went to music college. When I graduated, I got into medical science, and then I left after 3 months and then pursued music. So studying music as well was really the first time I got to experience that downtown thing.
Just to insert for a second. So I'm always interested in this moment that happens in a young person's life when they especially like someone that's got the inclination to be creative, where there's a fork in the road and they can do the sensible thing, get the straight job and play music on the side, or they can go all in. And people choose, most people choose the one, and the crazies choose the other. And obviously I'm sitting across the table from a crazy. And so what was that moment like where you were just like, I don't care, I'm going for it?
Okay. So I remember I was catching a train every day, getting this. I remember before college, my parents are Filipino. I'm Filipino. My parents are Filipino. My sister's an architect. My middle sister does computer science, and it was all like my cousins are nurses and engineers, and all my friends are doing engineering and all this stuff. And that's kind of like the route that your parents immigrated from a third world country, so you are now in an opportunity to make sure that you get a really good job.
Yeah.
Become a doctor.
It's like an immigrant mindset.
Yeah, but I get it, because
totally.
it's the greatest way out of that poverty. And I remember when when I tried to apply for college, when I graduated high school, I asked my parents, when I graduate high school, can you guys buy me a bass? Like I had my cheap Chinese made bass, but when I graduate, a Music Man, yeah. When I graduated, I asked my parents if when I graduate, can you guys buy me a Fender? Because my friends were like, their parents are buying them cars or giving them a trip somewhere, and I go, I don't want any of that. I would love a Fender bass. I want a real Fender bass, American made. And they said no. They're like, we're not,
because they were good parents.
Well, yes, definitely. And they also said everyone graduates. Like.
That's nothing.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
What if you get into college? We'll help you buy a bass. And I was like, fair enough. To me, that was a very fair deal.
Yeah.
And then when I got into medical science, I was like, here we go. And they said, okay, let's go. And I looked for a Fender jazz bass, and I started pursuing this degree, and it would take about 10 years. If I made the right choices and eventually all this stuff, 10 years, I'll become a doctor. Right? And I was like, okay, here we go. From 3 months, a month or 2 months, whatever it was, I don't even remember anymore. I would catch the train to college every day, and I would see this young kid on that train that has this lanyard that had like a James C. Academy of Music. And in my head, I was like, what? You can study music? And I used my Nokia phone and paid 20 cents per megabyte to search what this college is, and it was a private college that you can study music. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And then I thought about it as I was catching that train. Okay, this is when I knew that I need to pursue music. When I was like, why do I want to become a doctor? And this was my answer. Well, when I become a doctor, I will have the money to buy anything. I can buy a Strat, I can buy a P-Bass, I can buy. I started thinking like that, and I was like, oh, hold on. That's wrong. Something's up. If I'm just doing if I'm going down that route, and I'm thinking about the instruments that I can buy, I was like, I'm wasting too much time. And I remember I sat down with my parents and I told them, hey, I was like, I think I want to drop out of medical school and pursue music. And I was ready to get And my mom goes, she said, do what you love, but just do it. Make sure you do it. If you're going to do it, do it.
Like, be serious.
Yeah. Like if you want to do that, but finish it. Make sure you finish it. Don't change around and waste too much time. Mm-hmm. And she did say, I have a plan B just in case. And my plan B was, I technically have a high school music degree if I can teach. So I'm technically a high school music teacher, but I've never used it. But I had that plan B.
You already had it.
I have it on top. On top of my. Yeah, I earned it after my music degree.
Oh, okay.
So cool. That was for my mom. I was like to my mom and dad, I was like, I'll give you this. But that was important too because, the domino effect of life. If I didn't pursue that, if my mom did not tell me, this is just now that I'm thinking about it.
That's why we do this.
If my mom did not tell me to pursue oh, wow, holy crap. It's just hitting me. If my mom did not tell me to pursue a teaching degree or have a plan B, I don't think I would be here. And here's kind of how, if I can just connect it. Tell me if I'm jumping. But after I finished music college, I'm gigging and I'm playing and I'm meeting all these people. And I thought, this is it. I'm at the place where I need to be. I'll just do this teaching degree. So I at least have this for my mom and in case whatever, for me too, in case something fails, whatever. So I went to the University of New South Wales, which is a state in Australia, in Sydney, and I studied a diploma of education. And that year, to get that diploma, I met this guy, another guy that was pursuing that same degree, named Travis New. Travis New is a guitarist, and he was here a couple months ago, and he just played at the Opry with Keith Urban. So it's like, this is like
amazing.
Like we saw each other grow. He still lives in Australia, but my point is, when he was pursuing, we studied together, and we get to the point where we had like spare time, like a lot of free time, and we would just smoke weed on on the streets outside of the college because you can't do it in campus. But we got to know each other, and he was like, "Hey, dude, do you play country music?" And my gigging mindset was like, yeah, whatever you need. I've never touched country music, ever. And this was my one and only country gig in Australia. And the artist that he was MDing, that he recommended me for.
Music directing, so he was building the band for the other artist.
And he asked me to play for this artist. That artist had a manager. That manager was the CEO and head of CMC. CMC is the equivalent of CMA in Australia. They're like the sister companies, CMC. That guy, his son at that first gig was taking photos. 10 years later, that photographer at that first gig that I did in 2011 is now the CEO or president of CMC. 2019, January, I get an email. This is my one and only country gig in Australia. I was doing soul music, R&B, whatever it might be. Like, that's more the lane that I live in. Soul, R&B, rock, blues. But my one and only country gig, I get an email in January of 2019 saying, "Hey, Eric, my name is this. I work for Red Light Management. I have an artist playing at CMC Festival in Australia. Your name got recommended by Jeremy Dillon."
That's the photographer,
that's now
CEO.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like, "Are you available to pursue to do this gig in March with an artist named Lindsay L?" And I was like, "Sure." And when I did that gig in March, I played for her, and she was like, "You're the best bass player I've ever played with. I wish I can teleport you to Nashville." A series of events allowed me this opportunity to get to that point in my life. Mm-hmm. When she asked me that, I was like, "Well, I'm ready.
Yeah.
If you really want me." 3 months later, that was March of 2019.
I literally have chills. I love this.
3 months later, July of 2019, I moved to Nashville. I do that gig full time, straight on a tour bus. Our first gig was at the Opry, which I thought was the Ryman. And I go to the Ryman. I moved to Nashville. I was like, here we are. Isn't the Opry the Ryman? No, there's another Opry. But anyway.
It used to be.
Yeah. And 8 months of touring with her around the world. I was here. I was like, I made it.
Yeah.
And then COVID. March 2020, COVID happens. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if my mom... I just really thought about it. If my mom didn't push me to make sure I had a plan B, that plan B became plan A that led me here.
Yeah.
She's that artist that that musical director that recommended me to that one country gig, and that one country gig that I did in Australia recommended me nearly a decade later. And I saw them random, but I never worked with them other than that gig.
I think this is a great time to circle back to what we were talking about right before we actually went live, which was that that tension between being fully present in the moment and also kind of thinking about what's ahead. Because I think that a lot of times young artists and even older artists err on one side or the other. They're like always in the moment, that they don't have any sort of sense of what maybe is next. And so they wake up one day 10 years later and they're sort of doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then there's another guy that's always like trying to look for the next gig, and he's just like, that person's not very fun to hang out with. And the true path is kind of what you represented in your story, which is like enjoying being along for the ride, enjoying taking the gigs as they come, enjoying being a musician, but also, like saying yes to things and inadvertently positioning yourself for new opportunities. And I think that the story is really emblematic of that very thing. Would you agree?
Yeah,
or what's your perspective on that?
I think it will always be it's a combination of, I'm a big belief, or the word belief is very hard to just throw out there. But, and if I could define belief, it would be this: whether I like it or not, whether I push it away or whether I don't want to, it comes up. Like whatever the concept is, whatever it is that you say, oh, I don't really, if someone throws something at you, it's like, oh, did you know Pisces think like this? It's like, I don't know. I don't really like that concept. Or whatever it is that someone throws at you of a concept, right?
Okay.
If someone throws me a concept or a concept that I'm thinking about, whether I like it or not, whether I believe it in or not, or whether if I push it away or don't follow that path, if it's happening, I can't, that's the truth. It's happening. A concept of that is the idea of the yin and yang, of your highest mountain is only ever as tall as your lowest point. So whether I like it or not, that has always come true. Whether I believe in that philosophy, whether I push myself to keep reading more into it, whether I push it away, every time those two meet and I live in those two moments, the best fucking things happen. It just brings out when I'm like, I'm going to pursue music, but I know I need to have a plan B. And I'll make sure I take care of myself and my mom, because she's the one that moved from the Philippines and took the risk to allow me to pursue what I want to do, to go in a first world country and pursue music. You can't do that in a third world country, no way. But when you do those two things, when you're chasing what you think you love, but then you allow and make sure that you know that this could all go away, so you better have something else, and you live in those two moments, it led here. It led to that moment.
Beautiful. Okay, so you got here, the pandemic hits, the gig goes away. You're like, okay, right? And it worked out with your work visa and everything. Yeah. Obviously, we'll just leave that alone. And so when did the meeting, the idea for pitch meeting come about? Which if you're out there and you're not aware of pitch meeting, you got to look it up. If you're in Nashville, if you're visiting in Nashville and you are lucky enough to be here on a night when pitch meeting is happening, you got to go to the show. It's unlike anything really that is happening anywhere in this town and probably any other town in America. There's my pitch for pitch meeting. Okay.
Okay. So, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. When I toured from July 2019 to March 2020, I never got to really experience Nashville. People say, "Oh, you live in Nashville? How's Nashville?" I'd be like, "I am here once a week." I don't.
You lived in a bunk.
Yeah. And Nashville is where I wash my clothes, and that's it. And I lived in Hermitage, so I'm so close to the airport. So it's like I never really got to go experience East, West, downtown, whatever it might be. I tried, but even then, you don't really integrate unless you're there in some longer length, right? And when COVID happened, I was just like, do I go home? What do I do? I don't know. Like, if I go home, maybe I might get stuck. Who knows? We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 months. That game was kind of getting tiring. And around October or August, the conception happened in August, and the first one was in October. I was just sitting down with some buddies from the Lindsay L crew, and I was like, I used to host a jam session in Australia called the Monday Jam. It is Sydney's best jam session, and by best, there's only 21 million people in Australia. Texas alone is 30, and Australia is about the same landmass as the United States. So
I'm sure it was still awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
but minimize.
But it's the one of it's really the only one at that time. But fair. As much as I want to go, I'm really good at wording stuff that's like, yeah, it's the best jam session.
It's part of the promotional requirements of this industry.
But it's the only one. But the beautiful thing about that jam session, because it is the only one, or the main one that really kind of more people knew about, I met some of my heroes there. I met David Ryan Harris there, who plays with Mayer. I met some of Justin Timberlake's band there. I met some of Jill Scott's band members there.
So this would be a place when cats were coming through town, they'd swing, if they had the Monday off, they'd come by. Awesome.
So it kind of helped me. That's where I met Corey Wrong and Petar Yanich on drums. So they would just come by anytime they're on the road or on the tour. So I got to meet a lot of people outside of my bubble. And I had this skill set of hosting a night. And I knew how to host some kind of event where there's music and there's a house band. But that was more like a jam. So people make stuff up, or you do Superstition, or a different version of Superstition this time, or Superstition in a different key, or Superstition but slow, whatever. But my point is, it's covers. It's a lot of covers, and it's you just make up stuff, which is awesome. And I kind of missed that, and that's kind of where I find the best musicians, because that was my mentality. That's when Lindsay L, the artist that hired me in Australia, that moved me here, felt. That's what she felt, because the musicians she felt were musicians that were always living at the edge musically. What I mean by that is, anytime I see a band or a musician at a show that it's their show, and they're good, that's awesome. But in my head, I'm like, well, you're supposed to be. That's your gig. Mm-hmm. Like, you better be good. You had all the time to rehearse.
Right.
Like, but to me, where I like finding musicians is when they don't know what's next. So there's something to that, right? If it's a jam session, you just get up, you don't know what's happening, and you see where the musician goes when there's no platform, what they do. To me, those are where you find the best musicians.
It is a tightrope walk without a net.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a paying crowd there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's magical to me.
Absolutely.
Because, anyway.
It's the crucible, man.
Yeah. It's like, that's where music is. Like, here is repetition, and here is safety, which is fine, which is always great. But music is, at least for me, music is here when I don't know anymore. But my point, going back to...
Which is a crazy thing for a bass player to say, because I think of all the instruments where you can kind of like... You can hang with a lot of instruments. Drums, you don't have to like hit the right note. You just have to hit the pocket. Guitar player can float on the top of things. Keys can kind of but the bass has got to like... spell out the chord. There's no hiding. So that's a crazy thing for a bass player.
I look at the bass as either. The musicians I prefer to play with are, this is selfish, but it's like, I can change anything. I change the weight of whatever it is that's happening. And either the musician can fight me and then it becomes an issue, or they just like, I have no choice but to lean into what I'm doing. My favorite musicians are the ones that go, follow me. Yeah. Here we go. But going back to at least the idea of pitch meeting, I had this skill set of running a jam. And mid-COVID, I'm just sitting down, maybe high as balls, because there's nothing else to do. Maybe. And I'm sitting down.
The whole nation was high as balls. I think it's fine.
I was sitting down next to my buddy Andrew Stone. And I was asking him a question. Andrew Stone was a tour manager of Lindsay L. He now is a songwriter in town. And I was just telling him about like, hey man, is there a night in Nashville where there's a house band, right? There's a house band, they play, but when people get up, it's not a jam. It's like they play their original music. And he's like, there's the Opry. And I'm like, nah, something a bit more accessible. Something that someone that just moved here can come into. And they just come and they play their original music. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, do they send songs beforehand? And I'm like, no, I don't have time to do that. Like, what do you mean? Like, they just get up, like a jam session. Imagine a jam, people just get up. All right, you and sax get up, or you and whatever get up. But instead of musicians, it's songwriters. They get up and there's a house band playing their songs on the spot. And they're like, and he was like, not really. Then I asked around. I did a bit of research and I went around during October when Nashville was kind of open. And I'm just looking around, asking around if they've heard of this idea. And then nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, a month later, a couple of weeks later, I started it. I was just like, well, there's nothing happening at the moment. We're not on the road. I'll just use this band that I'm playing with, Lindsay's band at that time. We had nothing on. Let's just do this thing. And we started it at a little venue called Belcourt Taps.
Yeah, which is the tiniest possible venue that you can ever imagine. Yeah, it's half the size of this room.
Yeah, exactly. And now, which is funny now because now it's a dumpling house. They sell dumplings there now. But
they've sold so many things in that room since I've lived here.
But that's where I started. I know that a lot of the times, this came from a quick side story. I had a lot of friends when I was growing up that would tell me great business ideas. I had a great friend that cooked hot chicken, like really good hot chicken. More wings, like Buffalo Wild Wings or Hooters. And he was like, oh man, one day I want to get a food truck and I can sell all this stuff and people, blah, 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 blah. And he had a full-time job, some corporate thing or government thing. And I'm like, why don't you? And I've heard that. I'm so excited for my friends when they say all these great ideas and then nothing. And I'm like, I told myself, I don't want to tell people my dreams and just tell them my dreams and keep talking about dreams. That's tiring. So
it's a lot of people.
When I have an idea or when I want to do something, I just, okay, well, how do you make that happen? So when I thought of this idea, I was like, cool, well, I have the band. I checked around some different venues. I have this idea. Like, hey, can I do this thing? You don't have to pay me, it's fine. I just want to do this idea. And I started the first pitch meeting on October of 2020, mid-COVID, with a four-piece band, 5-piece band. And here we go. And people got up, did their songs, and it just started from there, and it kept building. Like the build it and they will come mentality, they started coming.
This is so brilliant, man. And how were you able to, you're obviously like way out there in terms of guts and willingness to fail. But I think a lot of musicians, really great musicians, especially like in this town where you never know who's in the room or whatever, you feel like you're in a room full of arms, people with their arms crossed, just evaluating you. How did you motivate these guys to go with you on this kind of dangerous escapade?
I think that is a question for someone that's following. Because
maybe when Owen gets here, I'll ask him. Yeah.
Because I don't have, because I don't personally, I don't know. Like, why do I?
Yeah, why are you not afraid is an interesting question too.
Okay.
Maybe that's easier to answer.
This is one. Like, I always tell people, if your plan B, this is my plan B, and it's an ocean away. It's back home. But if you can literally and metaphorically have an ocean-wide distance between your plan A and plan B, like, it allows, at least for me, it makes me go, sure, but it's a lot of effort to go to plan B. It's like, might as well say plan A. Am I afraid? Hell yeah. Every day. I could fail, of course. But why? I think it is the notion of, I keep going back to the idea of what inspires me to keep going. It is that yin and yang thing again. It's the very thing that allows me to keep moving forward, because I hit a point where if I could back up one more from the moment I thought a pitch meeting in August of 2020, I was actually on stage in Berlin, Germany. 17,000 people in this arena. No COVID yet. Maybe it was there, but we didn't know what it was called. People getting sick, but maybe. August, November.
Some sniffles.
November or December of 2019. And this is kind of where it came from. Like, really, like, if the spirit came from here, then the idea started in August of 2020, but the spirit that led to that idea started in December of 2019. I'm playing in Berlin, Germany, 17,000 people with Lindsay L.
Yep, we get it, Eric. It was a big gig.
But it's this idea of just like, I'm setting the mood because it's such a weird thing to be at. And when I'm there, I had this existential crisis that I hit, and I was talking to myself. The songs were playing itself, literally, because most country music is verse, 1, 2, 3, chorus in 1, 2. It's playing itself. You don't really need to think as hard. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at this gig. Everything was red, and I'm having a conversation with myself, and I'm like, I did it. I made it. This is 6
by
months,
every measure, this is making it.
Yeah, this is making it. And I was having a conversation with my Eric before moving to the US. I'm like, I was playing weddings and playing for artists there and just doing all this stuff. And I was like, but 6 months later, you made it. You're now playing at a country that you don't even know how to speak their language, and yet you have them at the palm of your hand because you just know how to make people sing along. And I was like, is this it? What's next? More arenas? Like, really? Like, is that really what I'm going to do next? I was like, what's harder than this? If this is supposed to be the hardest thing a musician, not an artist, a musician, a player can get, this and doing more of it isn't going to do anything. What is harder than this very moment, than getting to this point? And I answered that question as I'm like, ugh. And the answer I gave myself was like, you know what's harder than this? What about setting a path for others to do this? But this time, what about music without compromise? Because it got to this point where when you're at the top of the mountain and you're listening and you're meeting all these different people, I would just hear all these stories of artists pulling their hair out. Oh, you can't gain too much weight. You can't lose too much weight because that everyman look works. You can't, oh, don't cut your hair. Can you talk more? Can your songs be a bit happier? Because right now, I know you just got dumped and heartbroken, but we need a bit more party for this summer. Your song's not country enough. It needs a bit more country twang. Oh, your whatever, every single version of this compromising thing of when I see artists up at this point, losing weight, gaining weight, losing their mentality, venting to each other. As an MD, I got to listen in to a lot of these conversations. And I was like, I remember that all I asked one time, the major thing that I asked management was, can I have a rehearsal once a week with the band? Because I know I want to present this music as best as I can. And the one way that I can do that is that. And the answer I got is, not at this time. That's not the focus. There'll be a new album coming out and we can do that then. But at this moment, that's not the focus right now. And as I'm hearing this, the conversations we're having is, oh, you can't wear to the artist, like, oh, you can't wear those shoes. You should wear heels.
Yeah. Well, the actual music in the room is one of the lower priorities in an artist's career, according to the management and labels.
That's when I was like, crazy. You know what's harder than this, than getting to this point? Setting a path for others to get here, but this time without compromise. And when I realized what happens and what causes that is because artists don't own their music. And I was like, oh. So pitch meeting may have its front-facing night that people may know what it is. And if you don't, it is just now a place for artists to play their original music. There's a 12-piece band. You play original music, it's on the spot. And I realized outside of that, what I really want is to create a space for artists to get to these places. But now they get to just focus on the music. That's hard. That's harder. Mm-hmm. That's harder than anything that I can think of. And I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to achieve. My answer, or at least the thing that I'm building to answer that, is Pitch Meeting is a nonprofit organization. That was my way of getting out of that, because I was like, what causes all these issues? What causes all these compromises? Oh, because it's profit driven.
Yeah, it's pursuit of money.
But I get it. I get it, because we all got to pay our bills. Nonprofit doesn't mean no one makes money. Nonprofit means that the decisions being made towards the building of the organization isn't profit led. It is mission led. And our mission statement, I can just boil it down, is music done the right way for the right reasons. That was my way of talking to myself and going, that's harder. Mm-hmm. That's harder than anything I can think of.
Once again, what you're saying really resonates with me. And particularly this idea of trying to think of what the hardest possible thing is and making that your lodestar. That's what has led me to this podcast. Mm-hmm. And among other things in my life, I have made many records and I've done pretty well as a singer-songwriter, and was motivated to do it at the highest possible level. But then after I started touring a lot, and it was fun. But after a time, I didn't play 17,000 seat arenas yet, but I did play. I started making my money, my living playing music live and my own songs, and that was the dream, right? And then there came a point in my life where I'm like, I can't imagine this. This is going to continue to be the same thing, in a different venue, maybe a bigger venue, and increasingly. But I saw people that 10 years prior that maybe I envied or something. They were playing bigger rooms. I'm like, they're doing the same exact thing. They're still having the 4 a.m. call time for the bus. They just get a bunk, but they're not happy about being in it. It's hard to be on the road. And what you said, you were in the big arena. You're like this. You're playing music by numbers. I can do this in my sleep. There's no challenge to this. It's hard not to go through the motions of it. And that's what, why I spent the last 5 years making this is crazy to say out loud, but like a TV pilot about a guy who's trying to make his living in music as an East Nashville folk musician. Why the hell would I do that? I can't even really answer that question. I mean, it's just that but it was a combination of a circumstance where I actually, you said you learned how to play guitar out of an injury, right? And same, I lost my voice while I was making a record, and suddenly it was the only time that's ever happened in my life, and it forced me to cancel gigs. And I was suddenly I woke up and I was like, holy shit, if I can't play guitar and sing, I don't have a living. I can't make rent. And that prompted me to, God help me, ended up being fine. But in that 3-month window, I thrashed around and was just kind of killing time. And I'd always been interested in acting, and acting to me was a thing that was, again, what other people did. And it was also something that the idea of it terrified me, but it was interesting. And it was interesting enough that I typed an email to an acting school here in town through the front door, just at the website, and was just I'm interested. I don't know how to do that. And the guy was like, okay, 3 days later, just come and meet me. And I like to meet prospective students. And I was like, who said anything about a student? I just I don't know what I want. And I went down and met him, and I was just I don't know. I like this guy. I could hang out with him. I could be an idiot in front of him and not feel too scarred for life. And that led me to attending a class. And Eric, I just never had been around actors or anything like that, but there was just something. It was a small class of 20 people, and it was just a scene study class. So it was usually two actors acting out a scene from a movie you've seen. And I also was had this impression of actors as I identified them as theater kids from high school and college, and I was always terrified of those people. They all dressed in black and had pretend sword fights in the courtyard at the college. But these were just normal people you'd see anywhere. And they were kind of chilling before class, and then the moment that the scene got ready, and then the coach was like, "All right, go." It just all of a sudden the energy in the room went. Whew. It was so magical. It was instantly there was something so powerful and transfixing about this idea of when everybody agrees to play pretend together. It is a place apart, a space apart. It felt it was akin to church in a way to me. And so I was attracted to that. I'm sorry, I'm I'll go through this fast enough. And I was attracted enough, so I was I kind of want to try it. And the idea of stepping into that world was so terrifying. And I'm obviously I have to, because it's all of my stuff in life has been led by terror in a way. You know what I mean? I could never. But maybe I could do a little bit. And then you get a little bit, something works, or, you get a little encouragement, or the cute girl looks at you, or whatever it is. You're oh, maybe I can't. And then as soon as it gets kind of boring, you're well, what else is out there? And then it's I've always been led by that. Anyway, so I did a scene, and I was as afraid as I've ever been in my adult life. Right. And so anyway, long story short, it kind of worked out, and I got in management, and I started getting gigs. I book. It's part of my income now. I never would have thought that. I never would have. I still don't I don't even like talking about it out loud. It still seems like a weird thing that other people do, and largely is. There's other people that are so great at it, but I get to participate in it, and it's meaningful to me, right? And it's still terrifying to really do it.
That's the magic.
That's the magic. It's the moment before. It's not terrifying while you're in the scene. It's terrifying the moment before. It's so terrifying the moment before.
But that's the idea. Yeah,
come on in.
Come on in. But that's I think, like I said, it is interesting to do. This makes sense, and everything here makes sense, and you can do that. But the moment before is the jumping that we're talking about. Yeah. The moment before is the jumping, where you go in and you create. Yeah. That's why I think it's so fulfilling. And even the word church, what does that mean? It's it's grabbing something that you don't know.
Exactly. I love this. This conversation is so great. And now that Owen's here, maybe I think that you're going to play a song.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Why don't you set this up? What's going to happen here?
I've been playing with Owen Fader for a few years now. I think when he first moved to Belmont University. Yeah, straight from 3 years ago. And this young kid just played sax, and just to transition out, as we would play music at pitch meeting every week, he would just play sax, and I was like, okay, cool. And I would write songs, but I'm not really a singer. But I love writing songs, and I was like, Owen, I would play my song at pitch meeting to teach the young musicians to go, all right, because you have some of the best singers singing there. And then my turn.
Make them comfortable.
I go, all right, guys, here's the thing. I'm going to sing a song to show you guys that if you're worried about if you're going to suck, if I can do it, you can do it. So I would do that. Brilliant. But then it transitioned to Owen being able to go, all right, Owen, I'll sing the first verse, you sing the second verse. And it transitioned to go, I'm going to stop singing. Owen, you just take the lead. And after a few years of just playing with Owen and figuring out life, we were like, man, let's start a band. Let's start a band together. Let's write some music together. So did this dovetail with pitch meeting? Yeah, it was like pitch is such a great place for artists and musicians to figure out what they want to do, because you have the space and time to find what that is, rather than getting forced into some kind of, which is what I've seen when you're so young, you get forced into this conveyor belt and like, all right, hits now, sound like this, trucks, because that works, a version of XYZ. But at least with the space of what I was aiming at for pitch, being a nonprofit organization, the best way I could think about the ultimate goal is to be a nonprofit record label where artists own everything. But with that space and that spirit of artists being able to take their time to really find themselves, because it's okay. And it's okay that you don't know what it is. And I've played for Owen for years now, and it took us that long, but it was the right time to really go, oh, let's write together. Let's make a band together. So Owen and I started this band with a few friends, Jake Baines, Cav Mims, Liam Hogan, Emmy Cannon. And I was like, hey, if I'm going to play here, I might just well ask Owen to sing one of our songs here. So we're going to play one of our originals.
Awesome.
It's called our band is called the Moga Family Band. And it's nice to be able to present that from a space that allows us to just take our time to know what we are and what we want to do.
I can't wait to hear it.
I've weighed out all the options. There's no more cards to play. It's like swimming with no water and flying with no wings. I'm pushed against a corner where I know I shouldn't stay, but I'm lost with no direction, with one sign I know leads the way. Yeah, it's what you do when you can't. It's how you hold yourself when you don't understand. It's the door that you walk through that makes you the man. It's what you do when you can't. I've learned a little lesson. I've found out who I am, baby. When all the doors are locked, I can still feel the key in my hand. It's what you do when you can't. It's how you hold yourself when you don't understand. It's the door that you walk through that makes you the man. It's what you do when you can't. There's no more decisions. What will you choose when you have nothing to gain and everything to lose? Oh, it's what you do when you can't. It's how you hold yourself when you don't understand. It's the door that you walk through that makes you the man. It's what you do when you can't yet. It's what you do when you can't. It's what you do when you can't.
Dude, that was fantastic and highly musical and also a bit wild and perfect for this show.
Thanks for letting me do what I do.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is why I asked you. I'm such a fan. And I just want to say that the fact that you have this, maybe this is from your like high school training back in the day, but like this, teacher attitude isn't this, teacher spirit isn't quite what I want to say, but something that like wants to impart and encourage, an encourager. You're a born encourager. And like not everybody would be like a competitive, high achieving musician in Nashville would be willing to just sit up in front of a bunch of kids and like do what they're, they know this isn't their thing that they're best at in order to make them feel at ease and comfortable. This is such a kindly shepherding spirit.
I appreciate that. It is very sweet, but if the word grace makes sense in this world, in this topic, the space that I want to come from is also like people say that, oh, you're so encouraging and blah, 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 blah. My response is, no, I'm really selfish. Like I push for that because I want the best. I want that. Like I push for these artists to go for it. And I push for these musicians to like get to this next level because I want it. I don't care if you want it. Like I want it. If I'm going to play with you, if I'm going to create something with you, I want it.
You want them to be fearless. You want them to be
because I want that. I personally want that. And I'm glad that it comes across that way, that it is nurturing and it's making them feel developed. But I want people to kind of understand that that is both. That's how you live in that world. I'm giving the other perspective of that because to say completely that I'm just trying to nurture everybody is nice, of course. And I'll take that as a warm hug and I'll be like, thank you so much. I just want everyone to be the best. No, I want to be surrounded by the best. And if my way of finding that from you is pushing you to get there, it's a combination of, I love that I get to do that with you, but that pushes me too. Holy crap. Like if I'm not seeing that there's more, like I'm not going to get better. The only way I'll get better is when I know that we're going into this dark road of like, let's see what happens. A way that I show that is every time I play with somebody, this town is a bit tricky because when I play with a musician, like in Nashville, when they're doing country music, mostly because that is the infrastructure, a guitarist, let's say, has a solo for 5 seconds, 6 seconds,
right,
8 seconds in that track,
4 bars,
and I get that. I get that. That's mostly how long they get to take. I try not to use bars because I get it. I more like length, like real time. How long does it take to find that spirit? When I first started doing pitch meeting, the first guitarist that I played with, Mr. Austin Goodlow, who's now Ben Rector's guitarist, he did his solo, his first solo he did on one of our songs, and he thought he was done. And I go, no, you're not. What are you doing? Keep going. And that was the first time in his life. I was like, oh, I'm so used to just playing that length and then I'm done. And he gave everything. He says, I gave everything I got in that thing. And I go, all right, cool. Now let's see.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy. Like I said, of course you're going to be good when you show me everything that you've got. But what I want to do with you is create. What I want to do is when you're acting, you jump. What I want to do is when we're having conversations, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to go. What I want is, I think the best music comes from that when you jump at that moment and you don't know what's next. I'm done. It's cool that I hear all the stuff you prepared. But that fearlessness comes from that. And if I push you, I'm pushing you to that moment because I also want to get there. The selfishness is also part of like, I want to get there. That's where I want to play. I'm pushing you because I want to be there. Let's find and see what happens there. That's my favorite kind of music. That's why I love pitch. When people sign up and we don't know their songs, this is the first time we're meeting them. I'm interviewing them on stage. The list has no order. When people get there, they're like, I was here first. I'm like, no, really, that's not how it works. But at the same time, it's free. You don't have to come, but it's also like, it's free. You get every opportunity to just meet all these people around you, some of the best musicians. But I don't like people they try to send their songs beforehand and I just tell them, I will not be checking this out.
What if a person's like, this one's kind of got a weird 3-6-2-5-1 in verse 3, but it only happens once?
Perfect. And I'll be like, my response is like, I forgot. Like, let's just go.
Yeah.
Like, we'll hear it, man. Like, I'm lucky that I'm surrounded by some of the best musicians in that band. We get to just do our thing. At the same time, there is this space. I want these artists to know that it's okay to jump, because then you really find yourself there. You've figured yourself out in your bedroom. You figure yourself out in the rounds that you're doing. You do rounds around town. You figured yourself out at one of your small shows or big shows, whatever it might be. But have you figure yourself out when you don't know what's happening?
Yeah, it's such a crazy opportunity and rare and invaluable opportunity for a singer-songwriter who does not have any familiarity with that world. All of their terror, all of their fearlessness happens in the songwriting room, maybe by themselves or their co-writers, and they take these shots. Maybe they try this rhyme and hope that the co-writer doesn't laugh at them or whatever. They make this song in the end. That's where all the scary happens. And now they have their song and they're like, here's my song. Instead of all of a sudden be in a situation where it's like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Like it's great because like that is so powerful. The writing the procedure and all the art of writing period before you even present it to people is so powerful. But then I wanted a space for artists to be able to go, sure, you think that sounds good in the writing room. Now, boots on the ground. Does it work? Mm-hmm. And boots on the ground. What if you take it away? Does the song disappear? Boots on the ground. Like, maybe that was so special at that moment and you knew it worked at that moment. Like, it's magical because I don't know. It's magical because people have their perceptions and ideas of how they want to present their songs. And I get it. But this space is a space for us to figure it out. This space is a space for us to see if it doesn't work. I always wanted to encourage, like, there's the new artists that have never played with a band before. They just moved into town. It's a great space to create community and meet people, and all of that. But what I get excited about as well, another version of that I want more artists to realize is this is also a space to see if that song works. This is also a space that if you're a bit more seasoned and you kind of already have the chops and you already know. You've already done some of stuff, and normally you get to try, when you try a song for the first time, it's at a round. Like, that's good. Or you have your own show, but those are few and far between if it's your own show. But this is every Tuesday, and it's free. And I've had so many artists that I enjoy playing with and that are part of the community that try out a new song that they've done because let's have you again, because you actually get another way to take advantage of this night. Mm-hmm. Try out to see if that chorus that makes people sing along. It doesn't? Great. Go back. Write it again.
Yeah. We all found out together.
Yeah. And that's,
no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be the byline of this podcast episode is like Eric Fortaleza, no harm, no foul. Like you were just like, take a chance on anything. Whatever happens, it's like tomorrow's a new day. It's such a healthy and wonderful way and to go forward in creativity. And it's been really inspiring to talk to you. I feel like we could talk for another hour.
I know. What I'm excited about this is like you're asking me all this stuff, and then as you're telling me your story, I'm like, hold on. I need to dissect all of that and be like, how did you do this?
We'll talk off mic.
Yeah,
I'll catch you up.
That's what I'm excited about. You are always welcome and to this event that we do and the community around. And I know you've highlighted a lot of people to share their stories and be able to take their time. That's kind of the spirit of what we do at Pitch. Anytime someone does their thing, sing, play, solo, I always tell them to take their time. That if you ever visit wherever we will be, and what our Wi-Fi password is, take your time. Thank you for letting me take my time. I can't wait to hear a version of yours and or like a way to present your thing and what we do.
Count me in. I'm coming. And you're firing this thing back up February 25th, which 25. Is next 25, which is next Tuesday.
But every Tuesday live at the Analog.
Every Tuesday thereafter at the Analog in Nashville on West End. It's a beautiful room. Everybody knows the Analog,
and it's free too. And we're for the first time this year. We've been trying it out for about a year, but we're also live streaming. We're streaming that thing live. Multicams.
Very cool. If you can't make it, watch it on the live stream. But get there. Get and get your physical body in that room.
It's a good time. It's free.
Yeah. I can't wait. I'm going to see you on the floor soon.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code Podcast. Okay, thank you very much.